That ugly scar is a perfect match for your inferior skin tone. Judge Harold Whitmore's voice struck her like a splash of icy water. He peered down at her from the elevated observation deck with unconcealed disdain. "You ought to depart at once," he stated icily. "My courtroom has no need for another disheartened woman of color seeking gainful employment." Captain Elena Ruiz immediately moved forward. "Judge Whitmore, every applicant present has met the stringent federal qualifications." Whitmore spared her barely a glance. "Then the standards have indeed deteriorated more than I had previously imagined." Maya briefly lowered her gaze, not from embarrassment, but from sheer weariness. She was intimately familiar with this sensation. Individuals prejudging her worth before she even uttered a single word. Nearby, on the combat mats, Ethan Briggs openly smirked.
A former contractor, broad-necked and boisterous, he was the sort who relished belittling others as it amplified his own perceived stature. "She looks like she tumbled down a fire escape," Ethan remarked, and a ripple of chuckles spread through the assembly. Whitmore directed his attention squarely at Maya. "Pray tell, Miss Williams, did you genuinely believe federal judges would feel secure in your presence?" Maya swallowed hard, her voice emerging softer than she had intended. "I merely sought the chance to work, sir." Whitmore emitted a dry, dismissive laugh. "Work?" Maya nodded deliberately. "My son requires health coverage." A hush fell over the room. She despised admitting this, loathed exposing her vulnerability to strangers. Yet, overdue rent notices and mounting medical bills possessed a peculiar knack for eroding one's pride. "My coverage lapsed 2 months ago," she continued. "My son has a heart defect. I am attempting to provide for him, even for a little while." Even Ethan's smirk faltered, but Whitmore's expression hardened further. "So, we are now transforming federal protection into a form of charity," he sneered. Captain Ruiz's countenance darkened. "Sir, that is sufficient." Whitmore disregarded her and began his descent down the metal staircase from the observation platform. His impeccably polished shoes echoed with each deliberate step through the hall, and Maya instinctively drew herself straighter as he approached. He halted mere inches from her face, close enough for her to detect the lingering aroma of expensive cologne and aged tobacco emanating from his coat. With slow deliberation, he retrieved a gleaming black fountain pen, intricately trimmed with gold, from his pocket. Rather than touching Maya directly, he slid the pen beneath her chin, tilting her face upwards as if appraising damaged goods. The room froze. Maya's breathing became shallow. Whitmore scrutinized the scar intently, his lips curling in distaste. "You expect officers to exhibit respect for this?" he demanded loudly. He then pressed the cold metal tip directly onto the scar. A searing pain shot through Maya's cheek, and she flinched involuntarily. Whitmore slowly dragged the pen across the tender flesh, deliberately abrading the old tissue. "What transpired?" he taunted. "Did someone finally put you in your proper place?" Maya inhaled a sharp, pained breath. "Please," she whispered. "Please cease." Whitmore applied more pressure. "Do you observe this?" he addressed the room. "This is precisely why public confidence in our institutions erodes." Captain Ruiz stepped forward sharply. "Judge Whitmore, desist immediately." Whitmore finally lowered the pen. A thin crimson line now marked the scar where the metal had scraped it raw. Tears welled in Maya's eyes from the discomfort, but she resolutely refused to weep. This refusal seemed to provoke him further. He reached for a folder tucked beneath his arm. "Health insurance for your son, you say?" Maya's expression shifted instantly. She recognized the documents he had just extracted, her application for assistance, with Elijah's medical records appended. A flicker of fear crossed her eyes for the first time. "Sir, I implore you,
Do not. Whitmore opened the folder languidly and scanned a page with exaggerated disappointment. Congenital heart defect, he read aloud. Requires ongoing medical attention. Several individuals shifted uneasily. Maya took an involuntary step forward. That is private information. Whitmore ignored her. You seriously entered a federal courtroom attempting to leverage your child's condition? No, Maya replied, her voice now trembling. I simply require the position. Whitmore regarded her for another protracted moment. Then, without preamble, he expectorated directly onto the insurance form. The sound shocked the room into stunned silence. Maya froze. Whitmore folded the damp paper once, then ripped it precisely down the center. He tore it again and again, the sound resonating brutally through the hall. Please, stop, Maya whispered. Whitmore calmly shredded the documents into sodden fragments between his fingers, then flung them directly into Maya's face. The moist paper scraps struck her scar, adhering briefly to the fresh red abrasion he had recently inflicted. One fragment clung near her cheekbone, while another slid down her coat. Maya remained immobile. Her chest rose unevenly as humiliation coursed through her body with such intensity it nearly rendered her dizzy. Those documents represented doctor visits, medication, and her son's future. Whitmore looked down at her coldly. Now, depart before security escorts you. Captain Ruiz appeared incensed enough to intervene physically, but Maya slowly stooped instead. One piece at a time, she gathered the torn, wet papers from the floor with trembling hands. Her movements were deliberate and gentle, as if handling something sacred.
Whitmore observed with evident satisfaction. Maya finally stood erect again. Her scar stung and her hands trembled. Yet, as she looked up, something within her had fundamentally shifted. It had not fractured. It had been honed. She carefully folded the ruined scraps and placed them back into her bag alongside her gloves. Then, she raised her eyes to meet Whitmore's. If I withdraw from every situation where people attempt to degrade me, she stated quietly, my son will learn that humiliation is effective. Whitmore's expression contorted. Maya slowly pulled on her well-worn tactical gloves. I can endure being despised, she continued. What I cannot endure is abandoning him. The room remained hushed, save for the persistent hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Ethan finally cracked his neck awkwardly, attempting to re-establish a semblance of composure in the atmosphere. Lady, you are still not suited for this role. Maya turned towards him slowly. Pain still shimmered in her eyes, but beneath it lay something far more formidable. Purpose. You ought to hope they don't pair me with you, Ethan declared with a strange smirk. Maya regarded him calmly, then stepped towards the combat mats. No, she responded softly. You ought to hope they do. Captain Ruiz maintained her gaze on Maya for a single, extended second before turning sharply to address the room. The combat assessment commences immediately. Everyone to the west mat. No further commentary unless you wish your file to be marked before you even set foot on the floor. The candidates moved, but the cavalier confidence evident in their footsteps moments earlier had vanished. 10 minutes prior, they had been chuckling as if Maya Williams were an unfortunate anomaly that had strayed into the wrong venue. Now, they navigated around her with a distinct form of caution. Not yet respect, but a palpable uncertainty. And uncertainty, she knew, had always been the initial fissure in arrogance. Maya stepped to the edge of the mat and placed her duffel bag on the bench beside her. Her cheek still throbbed where Judge Whitmore's pen had abraded the scar raw. She could feel a faint pulse of discomfort with every movement of her jaw, but she did not touch it.
She would not grant him the satisfaction of witnessing her examine the injury. Above the training floor, Judge Whitmore had returned to the observation rail. His demeanor was calm once more, but his eyes remained fixed on her, as if anticipating that the humiliation would finally accomplish what his words had failed to do. Captain Ruiz opened a file folder. The initial round involves controlled engagement. The objective is not to inflict injury. The objectives are control, restraint, situational awareness, and maintaining composure. Anyone who treats this as a street brawl is disqualified.
Ethan Briggs rolled his shoulders and cast a sideways glance at Maya. Hope you got that. Controlled engagement means no one is permitted to come to your rescue by shouting. A few men chuckled, but their laughter was subdued compared to before. Maya tightened the strap on her right glove. I heard the captain. Ethan grinned. Are you always this placid, or is that simply how fear manifests on you? Maya looked at him once. Fear makes people vocal. You would know that. The chuckle ceased. Ethan's smile thinned. Be mindful. Captain Ruiz snapped her clipboard shut. Briggs, reserve that for the mat, Judge Whitmore called down from above. Captain, I trust we are not diminishing the intensity because one applicant has introduced personal drama into a professional examination. Ruiz looked up at him. The intensity will be uniform for all participants. Judge, it had better be. Whitmore declared, federal judges are not protected by sob stories. Maya did not look up this time. She had already learned that some individuals did not warrant the courtesy of eye contact every time they addressed her. Instead, she rolled her shoulders once, a slow, deliberate motion, feeling the stiffness ease from her back. Captain Ruiz surveyed the candidates, pairing 1, Dalton, and Pierce. 2 men stepped forward. They circled, engaged, and within 20 seconds, one had the other pinned. Ruiz offered observations, swift and incisive, excessive force, poor footwork, reset. More pairings followed. The men met the mat with practiced grunts. Some displayed skill, others were merely aggressive. Maya observed them all. She noted their hips, shoulders, breathing, balance. Men invariably reveal the truth with their feet before they attempt to deceive with their hands. Ethan noticed her observation and laughed under his breath. Taking notes? Maya replied without turning. No. Cataloging errors. His jaw tensed. Captain Ruiz called the next names, Reed and Williams. The room collectively shifted. Marcus Reed stepped forward from the rear ranks. He was tall, but not heavily built, with closely cropped hair and the stillness of a man who had spent years mastering the art of restraint. Unlike the others, he did not offer Maya a smile. He did not glance at her scar. He simply walked to the center of the mat and waited. Maya stepped towards him. Ethan threw up his hands. Come now, Captain Reed. Seriously? You're assigning her the polite one? Marcus glanced at him. You speak excessively. A low murmur circulated among the candidates. Ethan's eyes narrowed. What did you just say? Marcus maintained his gaze on Maya. I said you speak excessively. Captain Ruiz raised a hand. Enough. Reed. Williams. Center. Maya and Marcus faced each other beneath the stark illumination. The room leaned in. Above them, Judge Whitmore's expression sharpened with anticipation, akin to a man awaiting evidence to corroborate his preconceived notions. Marcus assumed his stance. Are you prepared? Maya nodded. And you? A flicker of something resembling respect crossed his face. A fair inquiry. Ruiz moved closer. Controlled engagement. Commence on my signal. Maya felt the world around her contract. The laughter, the judge, Ethan, the shredded remnants of Elijah's insurance form in her bag, all receded to the periphery of her consciousness. What remained was breath, distance, angle, momentum. Ruiz dropped her hand. Begin. Marcus moved first, not impulsively, but with a probing step and a short jab aimed at her shoulder. Maya shifted just enough for his hand to miss. Not backward, not in fear, but simply outside the trajectory of contact. A few candidates murmured. Marcus adjusted immediately. He was superior to most of them. He feinted low, then reached for her wrist, attempting to draw her into a clinch where his physique would be advantageous. Maya allowed him to touch her sleeve for a fraction of a second, then rotated her wrist, stepped inside his lead foot, and fundamentally altered the dynamic before he comprehended that she had willingly accepted the invitation. Marcus registered the shift too late. His balance faltered. Maya's hip pivoted. Her hand guided his arm, and his feet lifted from the mat with a clean, silent inevitability. He landed on his back with a heavy thud, but she had controlled his descent so that his head did not impact forcefully. Before he could recover, her knee pinned his shoulder, and two fingers pressed against the underside of his jaw at the precise angle where resistance became inadvisable. Captain Ruiz's voice was swift. "Stop!" Maya released immediately and stepped back. For a moment, Marcus remained on the mat, blinking up at the ceiling. Then he exhaled softly. That might have been a laugh. "All right," he stated, sitting up slowly. "That was genuine." The room was silent. Maya offered him her hand. Marcus took it without hesitation, and as she pulled him to his feet, he met her gaze directly. "Respect," she nodded. "You did not underestimate me." "No," Marcus affirmed. "I simply wasn't swift enough." That response seemed to trouble Ethan more than the takedown itself. He stepped forward, shaking his head. "Man, you slipped." Marcus turned to him. "No, I did not. You permitted her to get inside." "She got inside," Marcus corrected. Ethan laughed, but the sound lacked conviction. "So, is this what we're doing now? Pretending one fortuitous maneuver signifies something?" Maya walked back toward the edge of the mat, but Ethan obstructed her path with his shoulder. "You believe you've proven something?" he inquired. Maya regarded him calmly. "No." "Good, because you haven't." "I'm aware," she responded. "You are still talking." Several candidates averted their gaze, attempting to maintain a neutral expression. Ethan's face hardened. "Captain, place me with her." Ruiz's eyes narrowed. "The assignments are my prerogative, Briggs." I stated, "Place me with her." Judge Whitmore leaned over the railing. "Captain Ruiz, if Miss Williams aspires to stand in a federal courtroom, surely she can contend with a candidate who actually applies pressure." Ruiz glanced from the judge to Ethan, then to Maya. Williams. Maya could have declined. Everyone understood this. After what Whitmore had inflicted upon her, after the events that had just transpired, no one could have accused her of cowardice for refusing an unnecessary escalation. But Maya recalled Elijah's text message. "You always get back up." She stepped back onto the center of the mat. "I am prepared." Ethan smiled and cracked his neck. "Excellent." Captain Ruiz moved closer, her voice low enough for only Maya to hear. "You are not obligated to prove anything to them." Maya looked at Ethan, then up at the judge, and finally back to Ruiz. "I am not proving it to them." Ruiz understood before Maya articulated the remainder. "I am proving it to the official record," Maya added, "because individuals like him, when they read documentation, do not see human beings. They perceive justifications." Captain Ruiz held her gaze for a moment, then stepped back. Controlled engagement. "Briggs, If you lose self-control, your participation concludes. Ethan raised both hands with feigned innocence. Naturally, Captain. Maya raised her guard. The room fell silent once more. But this silence was different. It was no longer anticipating her failure. It was waiting to discover what sort of miscalculation Ethan was on the verge of making. If you can sense Maya's fortitude in this precise moment, please honor this video with a like and share in the comments where you are currently viewing this narrative, as someone in your vicinity might be experiencing this same story at this very time. Subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell to ensure you do not miss subsequent tales of valor, justice, and truth that emerge when silence is expected. Captain Ruiz stood between Maya Williams and Ethan Briggs, one hand raised, and for a fleeting moment, the entire Federal Training Hall seemed to suspend its breath. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The winter wind pressed subtly against the tall windows somewhere beyond the confines of the building. Chicago's traffic flowed through the morning as if nothing of consequence were transpiring within these walls. Yet, every individual on that mat was aware that the atmosphere of the room had irrevocably shifted. Ethan bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, rolling his shoulders, endeavoring to project an aura of ease. He wished the onlookers to perceive confidence. He desired Judge Whitmore to witness command. He aimed for Maya to perceive impending danger. But Maya detected something else entirely. His jaw was clenched taut. His breathing was unnaturally elevated in his chest. His right foot kept subtly inching forward before his hands moved, prematurely signaling his intent, even before his body committed to an attack. Maya raised her guard and remained silent. Ethan smirked. "Last opportunity to step aside, sweetheart." Maya regarded him with the same detached gaze one might direct at a closed door. "You've already had your final opportunity to remain quiet." A few candidates stirred, but no laughter erupted. Not genuinely. Ethan's eyes darkened. Captain Ruiz's voice interjected. "Controlled contact, no strides to the face, no joint manipulations beyond what is necessary for compliance. Seize upon my command. Stop. Do you both comprehend?" "Yes, Captain," Maya affirmed. Ethan continued to fix his gaze on Maya. "Understood." From the observation railing, Judge Whitmore spoke down with a tone of dry amusement. "Let us hope Miss Williams comprehends that obstinacy is not synonymous with competence." Maya did not look up. She kept her eyes fixed on Ethan. "No, Your Honor. Competence is the outcome when obstinacy endures rigorous testing." The subsequent silence was sharp enough to be perceived. Ruiz offered Maya the briefest of glances, then lowered her hand. "Begin." Ethan advanced immediately, not with a reckless abandon that would suggest disarray, but with a forceful intent that left no room for ambiguity. He sought to exert impact, to apply pressure. He wanted Maya to feel the disparity in their physical stature within the initial moments and to succumb to panic by the second. His left hand shot out to grasp her shoulder, while his right arm angled to gain control around her upper body. Maya did not retreat. She shifted half a step to the exterior, close enough for his fingers to brush her sleeve, yet distant enough that his grip found no solid purchase. Ethan adjusted with surprising alacrity and drove in again, this time lowering his center of gravity, attempting to force her backward. "Nowhere to go," he muttered. Maya's eyes tracked his hips. "That's what you believe," she responded. In the observation area, Whitmore leaned forward. Ethan's right hand clamped around Maya's forearm, and for a brief instant, the room witnessed what it had anticipated, the larger combatant capturing the smaller opponent, strength asserting dominance over vulnerability. Ethan felt it too. A grin flashed across his face. "Got you." Then Maya moved. Not with grand gestures, not with dramatic flair. Simply a subtle rotation of her wrist. A slight lowering of her weight, and a precise step across the line Ethan had inadvertently exposed because he was too preoccupied with asserting dominance. His grip turned against him, his elbow lifted where it should have remained low. His balance faltered before his pride could even register the shift. Maya guided his momentum past her body, hooked her foot behind his lead ankle, and turned her shoulder through the opening. Ethan's entire frame tilted. His eyes widened, not in pain, but in sheer disbelief. The mat met him with a heavy impact, air expelled from his chest. Before he could roll, Maya was already upon him. One knee pinned near his ribs, one hand controlled his wrist. Her forearm settled across the upper part of his chest and throat. Not with crushing force, not carelessly, but with absolute precision. He attempted to surge upwards and found no leverage. He tried to twist his hips and discovered his own arm trapped beneath the angle of her weight. 5 seconds. Captain Ruiz intervened swiftly. Stop. Maya released immediately and stood, her breathing steady. For a moment, silence prevailed. Ethan lay on the mat, staring at the ceiling, his face contorted with a mixture of embarrassment and shock. The strongest individual in the room had not been defeated through a protracted struggle. He had been definitively solved. Marcus Reed exhaled softly from the edge of the mat. "Damn," one of the younger applicants whispered. "That was 5 seconds." "No," another murmured. "Might have been less." Ethan rolled to his side, coughing once. "You caught me off balance." Maya stepped back to her designated position. "You brought the balance with you." A few candidates looked away once more, not out of amusement, but because the truth had landed with undeniable clarity. Ethan pushed himself to his feet, his face flushed. "Run it again." Ruiz raised a hand. "No, the round has concluded." He slipped. Judge Whitmore called down, though his voice had lost some of its conviction. "A single exchange does not establish operational readiness." Captain Ruiz looked up at him. "It demonstrates control under duress." Whitmore's gaze shifted to Maya's scar, where the scraped lines still showed red beneath the old tissue. "It proves she possesses one trick." Maya finally looked up at him. "Then you should hope the position only requires one." The room fell still once more. Ethan stood fully now, breathing heavily through his nose. "You believe that makes you special? You believe tossing someone onto a mat grants you the authority to stand between a judge and a genuine threat?" Maya turned her gaze towards him. "No." "Then why are you so composed?" "Because you're still mistaking loudness for peril." Ethan advanced a step towards her, but Marcus subtly shifted. It wasn't a challenge, merely a reminder that the observers were present. Ethan registered this and halted. Captain Ruiz's voice grew stern. "Briggs, fall back." Ethan gestured towards Maya. "She won't survive in a real corridor. She won't cope when there's pandemonium, weaponry, shrieks, and fleeing people. She's a mother with a mark and a tragic narrative." Maya's expression remained unchanged, yet the mention of her son sent a chill through her, tightening around her spine like an icy hand. She recalled Elijah at breakfast with Mrs. Carter, feigning normalcy with pancakes. She remembered the ruined insurance forms in her bag, still damp, still bearing the imprint of Whitmore's disdain. She thought of every bill tucked beside the kitchen clock at home. When she finally spoke, her voice was so low that the room collectively leaned in to catch it. "My experience is not your justification for disrespecting me." Ethan's mouth parted, but no immediate response formed. Captain Ruiz stepped between them. Evaluation noted. Williams displayed composure, strategic timing, and control. Briggs, your actions demonstrated aggression prior to assessment.
Ethan's features contorted. That's unfair. Ruiz met his gaze with a cold stare. Nor is a hallway filled with frightened civilians. That's why we assess judgment.
Judge Whitmore adjusted himself at the railing. Captain, perhaps we should proceed to the tactical simulation. If Miss Williams possesses the capability this brief display suggests, she can demonstrate it there. Ruiz held his stare for a beat. That was the original intention. Whitmore offered a slight smile. Excellent. Maya retrieved her duffel from the bench, her fingers expertly zipping it shut. Her cheek ached. Her hands still felt the sensation of the small, damp fragments of Elijah's medical documentation. Yet, within her, a sense of resolve had solidified. Not triumph. Maya harbored no faith in victory as long as individuals like Whitmore held sway over the clipboards, the courtrooms, and the microphones. What settled was clarity of purpose. Marcus approached from the side, maintaining a respectful distance. For what it's worth, that wasn't just chance. Maya glanced at him. I'm aware, he almost smiled. You don't crave external validation much, do you? Affirmation doesn't cover the rent. No, Marcus replied softly, but what others witness holds weight. This prompted her to study him more intently. He gestured towards the onlookers. They all observed. Maya followed his gaze. The other candidates were no longer fixated on her scar. Their attention was on her posture, her stance, the space she commanded. Some appeared sheepish. Some seemed intrigued. A few exhibited apprehension. Ethan radiated anger. Judge Whitmore looked pensive, though not subdued. Not yet. Captain Ruiz applauded once. 5-minute interval. The tactical court extraction commences next. You will safeguard a designated principal through a hostile courthouse scenario. You will identify dangers, choose pathways, and proceed under duress. Anyone who succumbs to panic fails. Anyone who seeks to impress fails. Anyone who neglects the principle fails. Her eyes briefly swept over Ethan, then settled on Maya. Court security isn't about winning confrontations, Ruiz stated. It's about ensuring the correct individual returns home safely. Maya briefly lowered her eyes, and Elijah's face materialized in her mind with piercing clarity. Small hands, wide eyes, a brave smile after medical appointments. She had faced struggles for numerous reasons throughout her life, but only one reason had ever truly mattered. Ethan strode past her towards the simulation corridor, muttering, "Enjoy your 5 seconds, they're gone." Maya looked ahead at the mock courthouse doors swinging open at the far end of the hall. "No," she said quietly. That was merely the prelude. The mock courthouse doors opened with a hydraulic sigh, revealing a lengthy corridor designed to resemble the rear passageway of a federal facility. It featured neutral-colored walls, framed official notices, metallic seating, a security station, 2 holding cell entrances, and a series of surveillance cameras mounted high in the corners. It was an artificial environment, yet not childish. Whoever constructed the training area understood that peril doesn't always require darkness to feel palpable. Sometimes it manifests as administrative paperwork, fluorescent lighting, and individuals feigning normalcy. Captain Ruiz stood at the entry, a radio clipped to her uniform. This scenario involves a courthouse extraction. Your principal is located within hearing room 3. You will escort them through an active disturbance and guide them to the secure exit. You will not be informed which threats are genuine, which are diversions, or if your initial route is viable. Exercise discretion, protect the principal, do not pursue accolades. Ethan Briggs rotated his neck and looked at Maya. I hope you can decipher more than just smoke signals. Maya adjusted her glove cuff. I hope you can decipher anything at all. Marcus Reed exhaled softly, a sound that almost became a laugh, then directed his attention forward. Judge Whitmore observed from his elevated position, but his casual lean was gone. He stood with both hands gripping the railing, his gaze locked on Maya, as if his irritation alone could precipitate her failure. Ruiz pointed towards Ethan. Briggs, you will lead Team 1. Reed, Williams, Dalton, you are with him for this segment. Ethan grinned instantly. Finally, everyone will follow my directives and no one will deviate unless instructed. Maya surveyed the corridor. That already sounds precarious. Ethan turned. Do you have an issue with the chain of command? No, Maya replied, only with flawed leadership. His expression hardened. You got fortunate on the mat. Don't mistake that for competence in leadership. Maya remained silent. She was listening now, not to him, but to the structure itself. A faint alarm began to pulse from somewhere beyond the mock courtroom. Not yet alarming, more of a warning than an immediate crisis. Then, voices escalated behind the closed hearing room door. One irate, one apprehensive, one attempting too hard to project officialdom. Ruiz raised her hand. Scenario commences in 3, 2, 1, go. Ethan moved first, with speed and volume. Stack on me, left corridor towards the main exit. Move. Dalton followed immediately. Marcus advanced, but more deliberately, casting a glance at Maya. She had not stepped forward. Her eyes had swept over the security console, then the ceiling camera, then the secondary hallway barely discernible past the duplication room. Ethan barked, Williams, move! Maya's gaze fixed on the main exit sign. Incorrect path. He paused just long enough to glare at her. You cannot be certain of that. The camera positioned above the main corridor is oriented away from the exit, she stated. The desk attendant is continuously looking left, not towards the commotion, and the alarm originates from our rear, not ahead. Ethan scoffed. This is precisely why individuals like you falter. You overanalyze when decisive action is paramount. Maya's eyes remained on the corridor. No. You act with such haste that you overlook what the environment is conveying. The hearing room door burst open. An actor in a gray suit stumbled out, portraying the principal. He was older, with white hair, appearing anxious, clutching a file to his chest. What's happening? Who's in charge? Ethan seized his arm. I am. Remain behind me. The actor darted a quick look towards the left corridor, then away. It was a fleeting movement, easily missed by most, but Maya observed it. Do not take him left, she advised. Ethan pulled the principal along regardless. Move. Marcus slowed his pace. Briggs, hold. She might be correct. Ethan snapped back. I said move. They turned left and the corridor erupted. A man in a maintenance uniform emerged from behind a supply cart, shouting. Dalton moved towards him, but a second actor appeared through a side door behind them. The team became congested. Ethan propelled the principal backward with excessive force, losing his advantageous position. The lights in the left corridor flashed red, and a buzzer sounded overhead. Ruiz's voice emanated from the speaker system. Contact! Primary route compromised. Ethan swore. Fall back! But there was no clear avenue for retreat. The supply cart obstructed half the hallway. Dalton was engaged with the initial assailant, and the principal was growing agitated due to Ethan's forceful grip. Maya acted. Not with the rapid urgency of Ethan's movements, not vocally, nor seeking attention. With efficiency, she stepped past Marcus, intercepted the second attacker's wrist as he reached for the principal, twisted his arm across his own body, and forced him to his knee against the wall. Her other hand guided the principal behind her without any pushing. Sir, focus on me, Maya instructed. Take one breath and follow my voice. The actor blinked, taken aback by the calm directive, then complied. Ethan looked back, his face contorted with anger. "I had him." "You had him cornered," Maya stated. She gestured towards a secondary passage near the copy room. Ethan shook his head. "That's not an exit." "No," Maya replied. "It's an access point." Marcus was already moving. "I'm with Williams." This statement struck Ethan more profoundly than any insult. "Read." Marcus did not pause. Client first. Maya led the principal through the copy room, past stacks of mock legal documents and a humming machine that emitted a faint scent of warm toner. A locked service door lay ahead. Dalton, still catching his breath, observed it and remarked, "We're blocked." Maya handed the principal to Marcus. "Keep him positioned behind your left shoulder." Then she examined the latch mechanism. Not the lock itself, but the frame. The hinge plate incorporated a deliberate weakness for training purposes, concealed beneath a metal lip. She stepped back half a pace, applied the heel of her palm to the precise point, and delivered a kick near the lower hinge. The door yielded. Marcus stared. "You've done construction work too." Maya pushed the door open. "I've experienced poverty. That teaches you everything." They proceeded into the service corridor and reached the secure exit before Ethan's team had fully recovered from the entanglement. The buzzer sounded again, but this time it was a clear and decisive signal. "Scenario complete," Ruiz announced. The lights illuminated the space. Silence descended upon the training hall. Ethan stood in the compromised corridor, his chest heaving, his face flushed with mortification. Dalton avoided his gaze. Marcus released the principal and turned towards Maya with evident respect. Judge Whitmore remained silent on the platform. Captain Ruiz approached the group at a measured pace. Time recorded, principal secured, efficient extraction attributed to Williams. Ethan whirled towards her. She disobeyed orders. Ruiz looked at him. She rectified an error. That's not how teams operate. Maya met his eyes. That's precisely how surviving teams operate. Ethan stepped closer, his voice dropping. You believe you're superior to me? Maya's cheek still stung from the judge's pen, and the ruined insurance papers remained in her bag like an unbandageable wound, yet her voice remained level. No, she replied. I believe you prioritize being obeyed over being correct. The room absorbed her statement in silence. Judge Whitmore finally averted his gaze. Captain Ruiz did not respond immediately after Maya's declaration. She allowed the quiet to permeate the space. Let it settle upon Ethan's wounded pride, upon the faces of the candidates, and upon Judge Whitmore standing above them, his jaw set like stone. In her experience, truth required no embellishment when it arrived at the opportune moment. It merely needed individuals quiet enough to perceive it. Ethan scanned the surroundings as if seeking an ally. None emerged. Not Dalton, who had followed his command into a trap, not the younger candidates who now understood that confidence could be voluble yet ultimately futile. Not Marcus, who stood beside Maya with relaxed posture and unwavering attention. Captain Ruiz finally reclipped her radio to her vest. Reset the corridor. Team 2, clear the props. Everyone else, 5 minutes. The room began to stir, but the atmosphere had shifted. Individuals no longer navigated around Maya as if she were an unexpected obstacle. They moved around her as if she represented an incorrect answer they had previously overlooked. Maya stepped away from the mat and returned to the bench where her duffel bag rested. Her cheek had begun to throb again, a deep, pulsating ache beneath the scar where Whitmore's pen had raked against the old tissue. She kept her face slightly turned from the others and opened the bag just enough to examine the folded fragments of Elijah's spoiled insurance application. They were still there, damp and torn, tucked beside her gloves as if they were something injured. Marcus approached slowly, maintaining a distance that afforded her space. Are you all right? Maya zipped the bag. People keep asking me that today. Perhaps because today keeps providing them with reasons. She glanced at him, not unkindly, but with a guarded expression. I'm standing. Marcus nodded. That wasn't my question just now. She nearly offered a candid response. She almost admitted her face hurt, her stomach felt tight, and every time she contemplated Elijah's medical forms being shredded and defaced, she felt a tremor within her, a form of rage that unnerved her. However, honesty had already exacted a significant price in that room. So she stated, standing is sufficient. Marcus accepted her answer, though his eyes conveyed his understanding that it was not the complete truth. You read that corridor with more speed than I did. You perceived it as well, inadequately. Being late still counts if you alter course. He looked towards Ethan, who was engaged in a quiet discussion with Dalton near the compromised hallway. Some men do not. Maya followed his gaze. Ethan's face was flushed, his hands gesturing animatedly, his voice low but sharp. He wasn't dissecting tactics, he was defending his identity. That was invariably more perilous. Captain Ruiz approached before Marcus could continue. She held Maya's file in one hand, the official one, not the documents Whitmore had destroyed. Her expression had softened only slightly, but for a woman like Ruiz, slight signified something. Williams, she stated, your extraction was executed flawlessly. Excellent route selection, superior client management. You maintained your principal's composure without relinquishing control. That is significant. Maya nodded. Thank you, Captain. Ruiz lowered her voice. What transpired before the assessment should not have occurred? Maya met her gaze. But it did. Yes, Ruiz conceded. It did. That was the first truthful statement from anyone in authority all morning. And for reasons she couldn't articulate, it caused more pain than an apology would have. From above, Judge Whitmore's voice cut through the hall. Captain Ruiz, are we pausing the evaluation to provide emotional support now? Ruiz looked up slowly. No, Your Honor. We are continuing the evaluation. Good, he stated, his eyes descending to Maya, because a single successful traverse of a training corridor does not allay concerns regarding temperament. Maya held his gaze. Whose temperament? Several candidates froze. Whitmore's face hardened. Be cautious, Miss Williams. Maya's voice remained measured. I have been exceedingly cautious all morning. That response resonated deeply because every individual in the room understood precisely the extent of her caution. Careful not to retaliate, careful not to weep, careful not to cry out when a federal judge deliberately aggravated her scar and degraded her child's medical needs before strangers. Captain Ruiz intervened before Whitmore could reply. The next phase commences in 3 minutes. Individual threat discernment. Each candidate will face a live scenario with evolving variables. No team coordination, no external assistance. Ethan turned abruptly. Individual. Ruiz looked at him. A problem? No, he responded too quickly. Merely ensuring everyone is subjected to scrutiny. Maya picked up her bag. Exposure typically reveals what is already present. Ethan took a step towards her. You have a great deal to say now. No, Maya replied. I had a great deal to say before. You simply weren't listening. Marcus looked down momentarily, concealing a faint smile. Ruiz gestured towards the waiting area. Bricks, back in line. Ethan complied, but his eyes remained fixed on Maya with an animosity that no longer feigned professionalism. The training staff reconfigured the floor, introducing movable barriers, a replica clerk's counter, a metal detector archway, and 3 actors portraying courthouse personnel. A woman in a navy blazer acted as a court clerk. An older man carried a stack of documents, and a maintenance worker pushed a gray trash receptacle along the wall. Everything appeared sufficiently unremarkable to be overlooked, which was precisely the intention. Ruiz addressed the room. Threats within courthouses rarely announce themselves overtly. They resemble family members, journalists, clerks, delivery personnel, and occasionally even law enforcement officers. Your objective is not to be suspicious of everyone. Your objective is to observe what is out of place. Maya listened, but her attention had already focused on the maintenance worker. His footwear was incongruous, too pristine for maintenance, too rigid for someone accustomed to maneuvering equipment. His hands did not propel the receptacle in the manner of a worker. They hovered near the rim, poised for action. Then she noticed the court clerk, exhibiting nervousness, but deliberately so, a diversion. Judge Whitmore descended from the platform once more. This time, he paused near Ruiz rather than Maya. I will serve as the principal for this phase. Ruiz regarded him sharply. That was not part of the schedule. I am aware, Whitmore stated, but Miss Williams appears eager to prove her capacity to protect a federal judge. Let her protect one. A murmur rippled through the room. Maya remained silent. Ruiz studied Whitmore for a prolonged moment, then turned to Maya. Williams, you are up first. Ethan emitted a low chuckle. Perfect. Whitmore stepped into the scenario area and adjusted his cuffs as if entering his own courtroom. Endeavor not to allow your personal sentiments to impede your duty, Miss Williams. Maya positioned herself at his right side, close enough to control the space, yet distant enough not to intrude. Her cheek burned. Her pride ached. Her son's torn medical documents resided in her bag, but her voice remained steady as she responded. Do not be concerned, Judge. I understand the distinction between a man's character and the life I am assigned to safeguard. Maya Williams stood to the right side of Judge Whitmore as the mock courthouse environment came to life around them. The setting appeared ordinary at first glance. A clerk behind the counter, an elderly gentleman shuffling documents, a maintenance worker maneuvering a grey trash bin, and two candidates positioned near the metal detector as passive observers. But ordinariness was precisely where danger tended to conceal itself. Maya had grasped this long before acquiring any formal defensive training. Captain Ruiz's voice sounded over the speaker. Scenario active. Whitmore glanced down at Maya with cold amusement. Well, Miss Williams, this is your moment. Try not to mistake apprehension for instinct. Maya kept her eyes scanning. I'm not apprehensive. You ought to be. No, sir, she replied. You ought to remain still, his eyebrows knitted. Excuse me. Please cease shifting your weight, Maya said quietly. You're making yourself more difficult to maneuver should I need to move you. A few candidates overheard this and exchanged glances. Whitmore's lips thinned into a tight line, but he stopped moving. Across the room, the clerk dropped a pen. It clinked against the floor and rolled towards the metal detector. One of the observers glanced down. The older man with the folders stepped aside too abruptly, creating an opening near the counter. The maintenance worker's grip tightened on the trash bin. Maya perceived the pattern preceding the action. Diversion, gap, approach. She moved half a step closer to Whitmore. Remain within my left flank. Whitmore emitted a dry laugh. You issue commands quite readily for someone in your position. My position is between you and the threat. The clerk bent down slowly to retrieve the pen. Too slowly. Maya did not look at her face. She watched her hands. Empty. Nervous, but empty. Not the primary danger. Then, the maintenance worker propelled the trash bin forward. Ethan, observing from the line, muttered, "Trash guy." Maya heard him, but did not react. The bin was now obvious.
implying the actual problem was likely not the bin itself. The older man with the folders had ceased moving. His left hand clutched the folders too tightly against his chest. His right hand hung loosely near his jacket pocket. Maya touched Whitmore's elbow. "Step back." He resisted slightly. "I do not take physical directives from trainees." "You do today." She pulled him back one step, just as the maintenance worker shoved the trash bin sideways. It crashed across the floor, loud enough to draw every eye. At that precise moment, the elder gentleman reached into his coat and advanced rapidly. Maya reacted before any alarm was raised. She positioned Whitmore behind her with controlled force, not enough to destabilize him, but sufficient to remove him from harm's way. Her right hand intercepted the assailant's wrist as his practice blade emerged. She twisted his arm downwards, stepped within his guard, and propelled him against the clerk's desk with a muffled impact. The blade clattered to the floor. "Engage!" Captain Ruiz's voice boomed through the intercom, but Maya was already pivoting. The maintenance worker lunged from the flank, leveraging the clamor of the overturned bin as concealment. Mia snatched a document from the counter and struck him sharply across the face. Not refined, but effective, he winced. That fleeting instant proved pivotal. She swept his leading foot, directed his descent, and secured his wrist behind his back. Whitmore had recoiled against the wall, his breathing noticeably heavier. Maya addressed him. "Hands in plain sight, sir. Do not attempt to retrieve anything." His countenance darkened. "I understand courtroom decorum." "This isn't a courtroom," Maya stated. "This is a corridor." The words landed oddly on him, not out of disrespect, but out of practicality. Her intent was not to embarrass him, but to ensure his safety. Even after his prior conduct, the clerk suddenly cried out, "Weapon!" Though orchestrated, the ruse was convincing. Two candidates flinched. Ethan moved forward instinctively. Marcus remained still, his gaze fixed on Maya. Maya didn't pursue the spoken word. She followed the direction of the eyes. The clerk was looking toward the metal detector, yet her feet pointed towards the side office door. Another diversion. Maya pulled Whitmore away from the wall and guided him behind the counter, utilizing the solid structure for protection. Whitmore reacted sharply. "Why are we moving away from the exit?" "Because they want us to run towards it." "How do you know?" Maya's voice remained hushed. "Because individuals intending harm don't always obstruct the path. Sometimes they beckon you towards it." A pause hung in the air between them. Then, the illuminated exit sign flickered red, and the speaker announced, "Main egress compromised." Marcus murmured from the observation area. She predicted it. Ethan offered no commentary. Maya led Whitmore into the side office. The confined space was crowded with chairs, cardboard file boxes, and an emergency map displayed behind glass. Maya surveyed the area swiftly. Service corridor, rear stairwell, secure area. She slid a chair beneath the doorknob behind them. Whitmore observed her with reluctant focus. "You've done this before." Maya continued her movements. "I've performed actions that didn't afford me the luxury of learning etiquette." They reached a locked internal door. Maya tested the handle, then examined the hinge, the frame, and a faint scrape mark near the strike plate. She had encountered structures like this throughout her life, not as threats, but in residences where locks failed, landlords were unresponsive, and mothers learned to breach doors to reach their distressed children. Whitmore's breathing began to even out. "What are you doing?" Locating the weakest point. She struck once near the latch with the heel of her hand, then drove her shoulder into the frame. The door sprang open. They entered the secure corridor just as the final alarm sounded. Exercise concluded. Principal secured. 3 threats neutralized. Primary route avoided. Clean extraction, Captain Ruiz announced. For a moment, silence prevailed. Whitmore stood beside Maya in the service corridor, regarding her as if compelled to perceive her from a distance that precluded judgment. Maya released his sleeve immediately. "You are safe now." He looked down at the spot where her gloved hand had gripped his arm. There was no hostility in her touch, no retribution, no hesitation. She had safeguarded him with the same dedication she would have extended to any life entrusted to her care. Captain Ruiz approached, her expression composed yet visibly impressed. "Williams, why did you disregard the initial weapon alert?" Maya glanced towards the simulated clerk. Because her words indicated a firearm, but her body language signaled an escape route. Ruiz nodded slowly. "And the maintenance worker?" "Too apparent. After the bin was moved, he represented a diversion, not a direct threat." Marcus folded his arms, a hint of a smile on his face. "Pressure, not purpose. That's a memorable phrase." Ethan scoffed, but quietly this time. Or perhaps she deduced it. Whitmore turned towards Ethan before Maya could respond. "No," he stated, surprising everyone present. His voice was low, tinged with uncertainty, yet distinct. "She did not deduce it." Maya looked at the judge. For the first time that morning, his gaze wasn't fixed on her scar. He looked at her hands rather than her eyes. And for one uncomfortable instant, Judge Harold Whitmore appeared less like a man of authority and more like someone beginning to realize that his power had rendered him blind. Captain Ruiz allowed the silence to extend, ensuring its impact was felt. Judge Whitmore's admission, though quiet, carried significant weight. His affirmation that she had not merely guessed, especially after his earlier pronouncements, profoundly altered the atmosphere in the training hall, far more than any applause could have. Maya remained impassive. She had learned not to place trust in the initial conciliatory statement from an individual who had already revealed their worst. Respect could be fleeting. Shame could be temporary. Power often reasserted itself more quickly than conscience. Ruiz consulted the wall clock. 10-minute intermission. Hydrate, regroup, and remain accessible. The concluding phase will commence shortly. The candidates gradually dispersed. Some moved towards the hydration station. Others conversed in hushed tones, no longer bold enough to openly deride Maya. Ethan Briggs remained at the edge of the training mat, his jaw tight, arms crossed, feigning indifference to the shift in the room's dynamics. Marcus Reed approached Maya, offering a bottle of water. "You've certainly earned that much," he remarked, holding it out without encroaching on her space. Maya accepted it after a brief hesitation. "Thank you." Marcus's gaze flickered to her cheek. "That cut needs attention." "It's not a cut, it's bleeding." Maya touched her fingers near the scar and observed the faint red smudge on her glove. For a moment, her expression became distant. "Old skin opens more readily." Marcus detected more in her statement than she likely intended. "Does it still cause pain?" Maya twisted the cap off the bottle. "Only when individuals believe it reveals something about me." Before Marcus could reply, Judge Whitmore's voice cut through the air. "Miss Williams?" Maya turned. Whitmore stood a few feet away, no longer positioned above her on the platform, nor shielded by elevation and distance. Up close, he appeared older than he had earlier that morning. Not diminished, but less refined, as if the simulation had dislodged something he preferred to keep concealed. Captain Ruiz observed from across the room, prepared to intervene if necessary. Whitmore's eyes briefly met the scar, then shifted away. You mentioned earlier that the scar was the reason someone else was spared. The room gradually quieted. Participants feigned inattention, yet all were listening. Maya took a slow sip of water. I said, "What?" The question was direct, almost an order. Maya's fingers tightened around the bottle. A child. Whitmore waited, but Maya offered no further detail. Ethan chuckled audibly from several yards away. "Here we go. Now the heroic narrative begins." Marcus turned to him. "Be quiet." Ethan stepped forward. "What? Are we all expected to weep because she has some elaborate justification for her appearance?" Maya looked at Ethan, the exhaustion in her eyes sharpening into something colder. "No one asked you to weep." "Good," he retorted, "because I'm not buying it." Whitmore, to everyone's surprise, spoke first. "Allow her to respond." Ethan blinked, affronted by the correction. "Your Honor, I'm merely stating—" "I know what you are stating," Whitmore interrupted. "That is precisely the issue." The room fell silent once more. Maya studied the judge intently. His tone had shifted subtly, but not to the extent of offering forgiveness. Not yet. Whitmore lowered his voice. "Who was the child?" Maya looked past him towards the mock corridor, and for an instant the training hall dissolved. She envisioned smoke seeping under a third-floor apartment door. She heard a woman's frantic cries from the sidewalk. She recalled heat so intense it felt tangible, and a little girl's cough emanating from within the darkness. She hadn't been on duty that night. She hadn't been compensated. She had been returning from a double shift, carrying a bag of groceries in one hand, with Elijah asleep at a neighbor's residence 3 blocks away. She was about 7, Maya said softly. Small, with blonde hair, wearing a pink pajama top with stars on it. Whitmore's expression changed so subtly that most missed it. Captain Ruiz did not. Maya continued, each sentence carefully articulated as if placing heavy objects down one by one. The building was on South Vernon, the 3rd floor. The fire department was still minutes away. Her mother was outside, screaming that her daughter was inside and no one could reach them through the stairwell because the smoke was too dense. Marcus listened intently, motionless. Maya's gaze dropped to the water bottle in her hand. I wrapped my coat around my face and entered. I found her behind a bedroom door. She was under a blanket, believing it would shield her from the smoke. Someone in the room exhaled audibly. Whitmore took a small step backward. What was her name? Maya looked at him. I don't know what her family called her. His mouth parted slightly, but at the hospital, she continued. A nurse mentioned her name was Lily. Color drained from Whitmore's face. Captain Ruiz's eyes narrowed. Lily? Maya nodded. That's what I heard. I didn't remain. I had burns on my face and arms. They treated me in another section. By morning, I had to leave because my son was waiting with a neighbor. Whitmore stared at her as if the floor had vanished beneath him. Maya misinterpreted his silence and offered a faint, weary shrug. That's all. No grand speech, no heroic act, no headline, just a child who got out and a face that didn't. Captain Ruiz moved towards her desk with sudden resolve. What year was this? Maya looked at her. 5 years ago, late October. Ruiz opened Maya's file and began flipping through the pages rapidly. South Vernon, apartment fire. Maya's gaze sharpened. Yes, Whitmore whispered, barely a sound. But it halted Ruiz's hands for a fraction of a second. Maya looked back at him. You know about that fire? Whitmore did not respond. His eyes had drifted to a distant place. A hospital corridor, a small child coughing through an oxygen mask, his daughter weeping into her hands, while doctors assured him the burns could have been worse. The smoke could have been fatal,
and some woman had carried Lily out before the stairwell collapsed. Captain Ruiz found the page. Her expression became impassive. She looked from the file to Maya, then to the judge. "Your Honor," Ruiz stated carefully, "your granddaughter's name is Lily Whitmore, correct?" The room seemed to cease breathing. Whitmore's lips moved, but no sound emerged. Maya's expression shifted for the first time. Not fear, not anger, but recognition, slowly coalescing around a truth too harsh to arrive gently. Ruiz glanced back at the file and read aloud, her voice steady but subdued. Maya Williams sustained second-degree facial and forearm burns while removing a minor child from a residential fire on South Vernon Avenue. The child identified in the incident report as Lily Whitmore. No one stirred. The water bottle in Maya's hand crinkled softly beneath her grip. Judge Harold Whitmore gazed at the scar he had ridiculed, dismissed, and shamed before the assembled group. And now, he finally comprehended its meaning. Not disfigurement, not weakness, not evidence of her unsuitability. It was the indelible mark left from the night Maya Williams walked into flames and carried his granddaughter back out. For the first time that morning, Judge Harold Whitmore appeared smaller than his title. He stood in the center of the training hall, his hands hanging loosely at his sides, gazing at Maya Williams as if the past had entered the room, clad in a gray thermal shirt, worn tactical gloves, and bearing a scar he had foolishly insulted. The silence surrounding him was no longer one of respect, but of judgment. Every candidate, every instructor, every role player from the simulation seemed to grasp that an irreversible shift had occurred. Captain Ruiz held the file open, but read no further. It was unnecessary. The truth permeated the air. Maya looked at the judge, then at the folder in Ruiz's hands, and the fragmented pieces within her began to assemble themselves into a painful coherence. Lily Whitmore, the little girl in the pink star pajamas, the child who had clung to Maya's neck with such ferocity that her tiny fingers left bruises. The child Maya had carried through thick smoke while her own skin blistered beneath melting fabric. And that child's grandfather had stood mere inches from her face, defacing a scar with a pen. Whitmore attempted to speak, but his voice failed him. Maya's expression hardened, not theatrically, but with the quiet finality of a closing door. So, she survived. The question seemed to shatter something within him. Whitmore swallowed. Yes. Maya nodded once, very slowly. Good. That was all she said. No accusation, no demand, no tears. In its own way, that hurt him more than a scream would have. Marcus Reed looked at the judge with open incredulity. You didn't know? Whitmore shook his head faintly. No. Ethan Briggs, desperate to reassert control over a situation that had completely eluded him, muttered, That doesn't change the examination. Captain Ruiz turned to him, her voice sharp. Not another word. Ethan raised his hands defensively. I'm simply stating that saving a child 5 years ago doesn't qualify her today. Maya looked at him, then back at the judge. Test me today. The steadiness in her voice silenced him for a brief moment. Ethan stepped forward willingly. Whitmore suddenly raised a hand. No. All eyes turned to him. The judge's gaze remained fixed on Maya's scar. He seemed incapable of not seeing it now, not as a blemish, but as irrefutable evidence. Testimony etched into skin. No more gains, he said quietly. Captain Ruiz closed the file. Your Honor, the final phase is still required. Whitmore took a breath, then nodded. Then conduct it properly. Maya registered the word carefully. Properly, not fairly, not respectfully, but properly represented a starting point in a system where procedure held sway. Ruiz stepped between them. The final phase will proceed as scheduled. One-on-one protection response. No team support. No advanced threat profile. The candidate must identify, intercept, and extract. Ethan's lip curled. Put me in as the threat. No, Ruiz stated immediately. Whitmore looked at Ethan with a frigid gaze that hadn't been present earlier. You are not presiding over this examination, Mr. Briggs. Ethan's face tightened. With all due respect, Your Honor. She's being treated like some sort of hero now, Whitmore's voice sharpened. With all due respect, Mr. Briggs, you have conflated contempt with competence throughout this entire morning. A low murmur rippled through the room. Ethan appeared stunned, not because he disagreed, but because he had expected the judge to remain aligned with him. Maya offered no outward sign of gratitude. She owed Whitmore no debt for his belated embrace of basic decency. Captain Ruiz gestured towards the waiting area. Williams, take 2 minutes. Maya stepped away from the center of the hall and returned to her designated spot. Her hands were steady as she opened her duffel bag, but her breathing had altered. She could feel the weight of the truth pressing against her ribs. Lily Whitmore, a little girl, had survived. Maya had pondered that for years. Not every day, but often enough. Sometimes while Elijah slept, sometimes when sirens wailed nearby, sometimes when the cold weather aggravated the scar's ache. Marcus approached quietly. Maya? She didn't correct him for using her first name. He stopped beside her bench. You saved his granddaughter. Maya zipped the bag halfway. I saved a child. That's not the same thing in this room. It was the same thing in the fire. Marcus absorbed this. Are you all right? Maya exhaled wearily. You ask difficult questions for someone who already knows the answer. Old habit, Marine Corps. He nodded. 20 years ago, I believed the uniform conferred honor. It took me a while to learn. It only provides individuals an opportunity to demonstrate their character. Maya looked across the hall at Whitmore. The judge stood alone now, not speaking to anyone, his face pale beneath the harsh lighting. My grandmother used to say, Maya said softly, justice doesn't become fair simply because it wears a robe. Marcus looked at her. Smart woman, she must have been. Mississippi afforded her limited choices. That detail lingered between them, carrying the weight of older American narratives, deeper wounds, and past eras where black women were expected to endure in silence and still arrive punctually for work the following morning. Across the hall, Whitmore heard none of this, but he sensed its absence. He recalled Lily in the hospital, her small hand clasped around his finger. She had cried for the woman from the fire for days. The family had conducted a brief search, but then life, influence, and comfort had eclipsed the urgency. They had referred to the stranger as an angel, then moved on. Maya had not moved on. She had borne the consequence of that night etched onto her face. Captain Ruiz returned to the center. Final phase in 60 seconds. Maya stood. Whitmore stepped towards her, then stopped, maintaining a respectful distance for the first time. Miss Williams. She looked at him. His voice was softer now. Lily is 15. She plays the violin. She wants to study medicine. Maya's expression changed only slightly, but it was significant. The slightest release softened her eyes. Good, she repeated. This time, the word carried warmth. She should have the opportunity to become whatever she wishes. Whitmore looked down. Because of you.
Maya did not soften her stance. Because someone entered when others remained outside. The statement struck him directly, and he accepted it. Ruiz called, "Williams, center." Maya walked back to the mat. Ethan watched her with a resentment that had curdled into something uglier now that the room no longer admired it. He leaned close as she passed and whispered, "Hero stories don't stop fists." Maya paused beside him, not turning fully. "Neither does pride," she replied, then stepped into position. The final training area reconfigured around her. Actors moved into their designated places. A simulated judge's bench rolled forward. A side door creaked open. Somewhere, a radio crackled. Maya scanned everything, yet her mind was strangely clear. The scar still ached. The ruined insurance papers still awaited her in her bag. And while Judge Whitmore's apology had not yet materialized, one truth had been returned to her after 5 years. The girl had lived. That was sufficient foundation. Captain Ruiz raised her hand. "Final protection response. Candidate Williams, begin." Maya Williams moved on Captain Ruiz's command, not with haste initially, but with focused attention. The final training area had been reconfigured into a courtroom under duress, complete with a judge's bench, jury box, witness stand, clerk station, and 2 narrow aisles leading towards the exit doors. It appeared familiar enough to induce a sense of comfort, and that was precisely why Maya regarded it with suspicion. Judge Whitmore stood within the scenario as the principal once more, this time near the mock bench. He had requested to remain, and Captain Ruiz had permitted it only after assigning 2 instructors to monitor his every move. His face was pale, but his posture had reverted to something resembling official dignity. Still, Maya noticed the difference. He no longer regarded her as a problem. He looked at her as evidence he was hesitant to engage with. Captain Ruiz's voice emanated from the speaker. "Unknown threat profile. Candidate must protect the principal, identify danger, and extract when necessary." Ethan stood near the observer line, arms crossed. "Let's see if the legend holds up without a fire." Marcus slowly turned his head. "You really don't know when to quit." Ethan ignored him, but his eyes remained fixed on Maya. He needed her to fail now. It was no longer about the job itself. The morning's narrative was hinged on Maya's mission to protect the story she'd been crafting all day. She moved closer to Whitmore's left flank. "Remain by the seating until I signal a shift," she instructed. Whitmore gave a curt nod. "Understood." That single word, so different from his earlier defiance, nearly threw her off balance. Just hours before, he dismissed every directive as if acknowledging her authority would shatter some fundamental law. Now, he complied because the stark reality of the situation had stripped away a layer of arrogance that his ego couldn't rebuild. The unfolding drama commenced with a cacophony. A man in the spectator area leaped to his feet, his voice booming with accusations of an unjust conviction. Papers scattered as the court clerk fumbled. A woman seated near the main walkway erupted into audible sobs. A deputy, playing a role, made a move toward his radio, but his reaction was too delayed to be effective. Everyone in the chamber stirred, just enough to sow seeds of bewilderment. Maya did not fixate on the loudest disturbance. The shouting man, though furious, was positioned too broadly, his hands easily visible. The weeping woman hid her face, yet her shoulders heaved without actual breath. She was performing sorrow, not experiencing it. The deputy actor repeatedly cast glances toward the jury enclosure. This indicated that something behind Ma's right shoulder demanded attention. She subtly guided Whitmore 2 paces away from the bench. "With me," the judge declared, mirroring her movement. A court reporter positioned near the front abruptly rose, sending a chair toppling. Ethan uttered a low sound from the designated line. That's when Maya knew it was a ruse. The reporter's tumble was too clumsy, designed solely to divert gazes downward. Behind the jury box, a man dressed in a navy blazer quietly slid one hand beneath the barrier. His action was subtle, precise, and unhurried. It conveyed intent, not aggression. Maya propelled Whitmore behind the clerk's station just as the man vaulted the jury rail, brandishing a training replica of a weapon. She met him at an angle, striking his wrist against the wooden edge of the jury box. The simulated weapon clattered to the floor. He attempted to drive into her with his shoulder, but she pivoted with his momentum, utilizing the confined space to redirect his force downwards. He landed heavily, and she held him pinned long enough for Ruiz to communicate. "Primary threat neutralized," he announced.
Yet, Maya did not ease her vigilance. The term primary threat unsettled her. Primary did not equate to singular. Whitmore began to stand. "Is it finished?" "No." A second actor rushed towards a side exit, deliberately avoiding the judge. Several observers shifted their focus in that direction, but Maya's attention remained fixed on Whitmore's reaction. The fleeing individual was not attempting an assault. He was trying to force the protection officer to choose between pursuit and safeguarding the principal. Maya stayed by the judge's side. Then, the clerk, who had remained conspicuously silent throughout, reached beneath the counter. Maya registered the movement too late to feel entirely comfortable, but not too late to react. She yanked Whitmore down behind the station just as a blank training round discharged, echoing through the room. The report detonated against the walls. Whitmore dropped to one knee. Breathing heavily, Maya positioned herself between him and the clerk, using the station for cover. "Stay down," she commanded. The clerk emerged from behind the counter, another training weapon in hand. Maya moved from her low stance with swift precision. She snagged the clerk's sleeve, drove her shoulder into the attacker's hip, and sent her staggering sideways into the witness stand. The weapon skidded across the mat. "Secondary threat neutralized," Ruiz reported. Maya immediately resumed her sweeping scan. That's when Ethan crossed the observer line. Initially, it appeared accidental. One foot past the boundary, then the other. His hands were open, but his expression was not. It bore the same hardened look Maya had witnessed on men outside bars, in emergency rooms, and in stairwells where wounded pride had turned cornered and menacing. Captain Ruiz spotted him. "Briggs, back behind the line." Ethan did not halt. "This is absurd." Ruiz's tone grew stern. "You are disrupting an active assessment." He gestured toward Maya. "She's being handed this. Everyone is too afraid to touch her now because of some childish tale." Whitmore rose slowly behind Maya, his voice a low warning. "Mr. Briggs, step back." Ethan scoffed. "Now you're defending her." Maya maintained her angled posture between Ethan and the judge. "Don't make this worse." He looked at her with pure animosity. "You don't get to condescend to me. I'm speaking frankly." "No," Ethan snapped. "You walked in here with a scar and a sick child and turned this entire examination into a parade of guilt." Marcus moved forward, but Ruiz restrained him with a sharp gesture. She wanted to witness Ethan's transformation, and perhaps she wanted the file to clearly document it. Ethan stepped onto the mat. "You think you can shield him from me?" Maya's voice softened, making it even more potent. "This is your final opportunity for a clean choice," he lunged. "Not as part of the scenario." Uncontrolled, unprofessional. He came at her with the desperation of a man attempting to erase humiliation. Maya shifted Whitmore aside with her left hand and absorbed Ethan's impact at an angle. His forearm brushed her shoulder. His other hand reached for her throat. The room erupted in shouts, but Maya heard none of it. For a fleeting second, pain flared along her scar as her cheek turned, and memory threatened to unleash fire into the room. Smoke, a child's cough, burning skin, a door handle too hard to grasp. Then she reoriented herself to the mat. Ethan possessed strength. He had anger. He had weight. But his anger revealed the truth too readily. Maya ducked under his second grasp, twisted his wrist across his center line, stepped behind his lead leg, and brought him down with a force that shook the floor. He attempted to roll, but she followed, pinning his shoulder and securing his arm before his body comprehended that the engagement had concluded.
5 seconds. Captain Ruiz's voice cut through the pandemonium. "Cease, Briggs. You are disqualified."
Ethan, breathing hard beneath Maya's control, his face contorted in disbelief. Maya released him and stood. She looked at the judge, then at Ruiz, then at the assembly that had chuckled when she entered. "I came here to safeguard individuals," she stated quietly, "not to be protected from them." Silence answered her, not because there was nothing to say, but because, for the first time all morning, truth held more sway than the judge. Captain Ruiz strode across the mat before Ethan could fully right himself. Her voice, though not loud, carried a finality that silenced even angry men. "Briggs, rise and exit the evaluation area." Ethan slumped to one knee, gasping for air. She escalated. Maya offered no reply. She stood a few feet away, shoulders squared, one hand still slightly elevated, prepared in case he chose to compound his humiliation with one more misstep. Her cheek throbbed where the scar had reopened earlier, and perspiration had beaded at her hairline, yet her breathing remained steady. Ruiz regarded Ethan with the detached appraisal of a captain reviewing a report she had already mentally filed. "You breached the observer perimeter during an active scenario, disregarded a direct order, threatened the principal, and physically assaulted another candidate outside the established rules of engagement. You are disqualified." Ethan's eyes darted toward Judge Whitmore. "Your Honor, you witnessed the events." Whitmore stood behind the clerk's station, one hand resting on the counter. He observed Ethan, then Maya, then the spot on the mat where Ethan had fallen for the second time that day. Earlier, the judge might have found a way to mitigate Ethan's failure or reframe it as passionate intensity. Now, he saw it for what it was: pride devoid of discipline, force without discernment, anger seeking a uniform. "I have seen enough," Whitmore stated. Ethan stared at him as if betrayal had emanated from an unexpected source. "So that's it? She gets a narrative, and I'm ejected?" Marcus stepped forward, his tone measured. "No, she was tested. You disqualified yourself." Ethan turned on him. "You've been currying favor with her since she flicked you." Marcus remained impassive. "I respected skill when I witnessed it. You might try that sometime." Ruiz raised a hand. "Reed, stand down." Marcus complied instantly. His straightforward obedience made Ethan appear even more out of sync. Two instructors approached the mat, not yet touching Ethan, but positioned close enough to convey a clear message. He surveyed the room, searching once more for the laughter, the smirks, the easy camaraderie that had buoyed him initially. He found none. The candidates who had initially mocked Maya now looked at Ethan with that uncomfortable recognition people feel when a bully loses the backing of the crowd. Ethan's face tightened. "This is political." Maya finally spoke. "No, it's documented." A few gazes shifted toward the overhead cameras. Ruiz gave a single nod. Ethan had no response to that for several seconds. Cameras had a way of humbling individuals who relied on selective memory. He rose slowly, his chest rising and falling, and pointed once toward Maya. "You think this makes you superior to me?" Maya regarded him for a long moment. "No. I believe it signifies that I maintained composure when you did not." That response extinguished the last vestige of pretense from the room. Ethan stepped off the mat, but he did not depart immediately. He walked towards the bench where his equipment lay and began unceremoniously stuffing items into his bag with sharp, angry motions. The sounds of zippers and buckles resonated too loudly in the hushed hall. Captain Ruiz turned back towards the evaluation area. Medical assessment for both candidates. "I'm fine," Ethan declared from the bench.
"I wasn't inquiring," Ruiz replied. One instructor followed him nonetheless. Another approached Maya. "Any injuries?" Maya shook her head. "No." The instructor glanced at her cheek. "That requires cleaning." "It needed attention before the altercation," Maya responded. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Would you like me to formally record it?" Maya looked across the room at Whitmore. The judge had become motionless. "Yes," she said. "Document everything." Ruiz registered her words and gave a slight nod. "Good." Whitmore closed his eyes briefly. "Document everything." The phrase sounded like legal jargon, but in that moment it carried a weightier implication. Evidence, accountability, the foundational principles he had spent his career professing to uphold. Now, turning back toward him, he stepped away from the clerk station and walked deliberately to the center of the room. No one prompted him to speak. No one needed to. The room understood when a figure of authority faced a choice between preserving his reputation and speaking the truth. Maya remained near the mat, observing him intently. Whitmore stopped several feet away from her, intentionally creating distance. "Miss Williams." Maya's voice was soft. "Your Honor." The title seemed to cause him pain. He looked at the scar on her cheek, not with disdain now, but with a remorse that had arrived belatedly, finding the damage already inflicted. "Earlier today, I treated you in a manner no applicant, no citizen, and no human being should ever be subjected to." The room fell utterly silent. Ethan paused his packing. Whitmore continued, each word slower than the last. "I misused my position to humiliate you. I disparaged your appearance, your heritage, your status as a mother, and your necessity to obtain medical care for your son. I touched your face with contempt. I destroyed confidential documents pertaining to your child's health." Captain Ruiz observed him without any softening of her expression. This was not an act of mercy. It was about establishing a record. Whitmore swallowed. "And then, I learned that the very scar I mocked is the reason my granddaughter is alive." Maya did not flinch. The judge's voice thinned, but it did not falter. "I have spent years advocating for justice from behind a bench. Today, I stood before it and failed the very principles I claimed to champion." No one moved. Whitmore turned slightly, ensuring the entire room could hear him clearly. "Justice is meaningless if prejudice occupies the seat of judgment." The words settled into the room like a confession and remained there. He then faced Maya again. "I owe you a public apology because my transgression was public. Miss Williams, I am profoundly sorry. Not because you proved beneficial to me, not because of whom you saved. I am sorry because my actions were wrong even before I was aware of your circumstances." Maya's jaw tightened. That distinction was significant, and somehow hearing it made the morning feel heavier, not lighter. Whitmore lowered his head slightly. "I cannot retract what I said. I cannot undo the damage I have caused, but I will not evade accountability for it." For several seconds, Maya remained silent. Everyone waited, but she refused to provide the room with the neat, emotional conclusion it seemed to crave. Finally, she spoke. "An apology is a doorway, Judge, not the entire house." Whitmore raised his eyes. "If you are sincere," Maya continued, Then walk through it after today. When I am not standing before you, when no one is observing, when another woman like me enters a room and people decide she does not belong before she even speaks. Whitmore nodded slowly. I understand. Maya held his gaze. No, you are beginning to. Her words were firm, yet lacked cruelty. And precisely because they were not cruel, they resonated more deeply. Captain Ruiz stepped forward, holding the official evaluation board. Final assessment stands. Candidate Williams successfully completed the protection scenario, identified primary and secondary threats, maintained principal safety, and controlled an unauthorized physical assault without resorting to excessive force. She looked at Maya. That is not good fortune. That is qualification. Marcus straightened slightly. Several candidates nodded, some grudgingly, others with open admiration. Ethan aggressively zipped his bag and headed for the exit. At the doorway, he paused as if contemplating a final statement, but the room had no further appetite for his pride. He departed without uttering a word. Maya watched the doors swing shut behind him. She felt no sense of triumph. Triumph was too simplistic a word for the day's events. What she felt was weariness, raw emotion, and a quiet steadfastness. Ruiz turned to the remaining candidates. Final decisions will be announced following administrative review. Whitmore met Maya's gaze once more. Miss Williams, concerning your son's paperwork. Maya gently but firmly interrupted him. You can replace the document. You cannot replace what you demonstrated to me. His face tightened with shame. She picked up her duffel bag. Then, show me something different next time. And for the first time that day, Judge Harold Whitmore found himself without a defense, a clever retort, or any authority potent enough to answer her. Captain Ruiz directed everyone back into formation, but the atmosphere within the room had fundamentally shifted. There are moments when individuals occupy the same physical space under the same lights, wearing the same attire, yet the world around them transforms so completely that even their respiration sounds altered. Maya Williams felt this shift in the Federal Training Hall as acutely as the sting along her cheek. Judge Whitmore's apology lingered, incomplete, not due to any lack of words, but because language has its limitations. It could reach the ear, it could stir the conscience, but it could not mend the torn document, erase the echo of laughter, or obliterate the memory of an expensive pen pressed into a scar forged in flames. Maya stood near the end of the candidate line, her duffel bag at her feet. The damp fragments of Elijah's insurance paperwork remained inside. She could feel their presence like a tangible weight, though they were virtually weightless. Captain Ruiz held the final evaluation board against her chest. Administrative review is complete. Silence prevailed. Marcus Reed stood 2 positions away from Maya, his posture erect and composed. He exhibited no nervousness, only the calm of a man awaiting a verdict he would accept regardless of its nature. Such tranquility stemmed from experience, not innocence. Ethan Briggs was gone, but his absence left a palpable void. It remained in the room like the faint outline of a stain. The candidates who had initially joined in laughter with him now stood rigidly, eyes fixed forward, unwilling to meet Maya's gaze for more than a fleeting moment. Judge Whitmore stood beside Ruiz, not above her. That alone altered the room's dynamic. Earlier, he had spoken from the observation platform, like a figure dispensing judgment from a balcony. Now, he stood on the same floor as everyone else. The polished tips of his shoes brushed the same mat where Maya had endured mockery, tests, and the necessity of proving herself twice over for half the recognition. Ruiz commenced. The role under evaluation today is not merely ceremonial. Court protection demands physical capability, threat recognition,
discipline under duress, restraint, and sound moral judgment. Any candidate can win a confrontation. Not every candidate can safeguard a life. Her gaze swept briefly over the group. Several applicants displayed strength. Some demonstrated training, fewer exhibited sound judgment. A man near the back swallowed audibly. Ruiz looked down at her clipboard. Candidate Marcus Reed. Marcus stepped forward. Captain, you adapted effectively when new information emerged. You pursued the correct avenue when the initial plan faltered. You prioritized the principal's safety over your own ego. That is significant. Marcus gave a single nod. Thank you, Captain. You are selected for the secondary protection detail pending final administrative procedures. A low murmur rippled through the room. Marcus accepted the news with a slight nod and stepped back. Ruiz turned the page. Maya remained still. She had trained herself not to entertain hope prematurely. Hope, in her experience, could be generous in the morning and cruel by afternoon. It was better to stand, better to wait, better to allow decisions to solidify into facts before allowing them to touch the heart. Ruiz looked up. Candidate Maya Williams.
The room fell silent. Maya stepped forward. Captain Ruiz studied her for a moment, and a silent understanding passed between the two women. An unspoken acknowledgement that needed no explanation for anyone who had ever navigated the challenge of maintaining professionalism while swallowing insult. Ruiz's voice remained official, yet an underlying warmth was perceptible. You demonstrated controlled physical response, superior route selection, advanced threat recognition, principal management under pressure, and restraint during an unauthorized assault. Furthermore, you continued the evaluation despite personal misconduct directed towards you by an authority figure. Maya's eyes briefly flickered toward Whitmore. Then she returned her gaze and Ruiz continued. Based on your performance, you are selected for the Primary Court Protection Unit. The words entered Maya's chest slowly, as if her body initially hesitated to accept them. Primary Court Protection Unit, stable employment, health benefits, a badge earned through merit, not pity, a door, perhaps not the entire house, but a door she had secured with every breath she had refused to squander on entreaties. Marcus offered a soft smile. That's right. A few candidates began to clap. Initially hesitant, only 2 or 3, then more joined in, their applause growing from tentative to firm. It was not a thunderous ovation, not a Hollywood climax. It was awkward, human, tinged with shame and imbued with respect, which made it more authentic than any applause that came too easily. Maya did not smile, not fully. She gave a single nod to Captain Ruiz. Thank you. Ruiz's voice lowered. You earned it. Judge Whitmore stepped forward then, carefully, leaving sufficient space so Maya would not feel cornered. Miss Williams, before this room disperses, I must convey one further statement. Maya looked at him. You have already apologized? Yes, he confirmed, but I have not yet rectified what I can. He turned to the administrative assistant standing near the desk. Miss Parker, please prepare a formal incident report detailing my conduct this morning, including the destruction of private medical documentation. Forward a copy to the Judicial Conduct Office and to Captain Ruiz. A ripple went through the room. Maya's eyes sharpened. Whitmore continued. Additionally, please prepare immediate replacement documentation for Miss Williams's dependent benefits packet. Should there be any delay attributable to my actions, my office will issue written confirmation that documents were destroyed during this evaluation. Captain Ruiz observed him closely. That will be appended to the file. Whitmore nodded. It should be. That acknowledgement carried weight because it cost him something. Not enough to entirely offset the morning's events, but a cost nonetheless. Maya stated, My son's name is Elijah. He is not a packet. Whitmore lowered his eyes. You are correct, Elijah Williams.
I will remember that. You should remember all their names, Maya advised. The individuals who stand before your bench. The judge absorbed the correction without offering a defense. I should. An older candidate standing near the wall shifted, then spoke unexpectedly. Miss Williams? Maya turned. Send only text, no instructions or comments. He appeared distinctly uneasy, his salt and pepper mustache quivering subtly as he removed his hat. I found myself chuckling when you entered. I really shouldn't have. Another gentleman present lowered his gaze. Me too, chimed in a younger candidate near the water fountain. I didn't say anything, but I did laugh, he admitted. Maya surveyed them each in turn. Her expression conveyed no smugness, only a weary comprehension. My grandmother used to remark, she stated, that silence is sometimes simply cruelty with improved etiquette. The younger man's face reddened. Yes, ma'am. That specific address, ma'am, struck differently than the earlier amusement. It wasn't an act of deference, but of acknowledgement. Whitmore pivoted to face the assembled applicants. His tone recaptured some of its judicial solemnity, though it lacked the earlier overbearing arrogance. Let this room register a crucial understanding, he declared. Prejudice doesn't always announce itself with animosity. At times, it manifests as doubt, as casual jesting, as inconsistent application of standards, or as indifference when the individual experiencing humiliation is not you. No one dared to interrupt him. He looked back at Maya. I failed that test before the assessment even commenced. Maya met his gaze steadily. Then do not fail the next person. I will not, he vowed. She offered no reply, understanding that promises made under scrutiny held little weight. Captain Ruiz closed the folder. Report Monday at 700 hours, Williams. Business attire is required for orientation. Ensure your training gear is packed. Read the materials. Same time. Maya nodded. I'll be there. Marcus inclined himself slightly toward her. Guess we're colleagues now? Maya cast a brief glance his way. Don't give me reason to regret that. He offered a smile. Yes, ma'am. For the first time that entire day, Maya almost returned his smile. Whitmore stepped aside as she stooped to retrieve her duffel bag. His eyes again settled on the scar, but this time his expression held a trace of sorrow. Maya noticed and paused. Don't look at it as a misfortune, she advised. He met her eyes. She adjusted the strap on her shoulder. A little girl survived. Whitmore's throat constricted. Yes, he whispered. She did. Maya moved past him toward the exit, and this time, the doorway seemed to open for her without explicit instruction. No one laughed. No one obstructed her progress. No one questioned her right to be there. They had witnessed the answer. Maya Williams emerged from the federal training facility and entered the lobby, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder, the sting on her cheek still palpable, her body bearing the peculiar weariness that follows enduring a day no person should ever be forced to confront. Behind her, the room remained tranquil, not the hushed quiet of anticipation for permission to laugh again, but the profound stillness of a courtroom after crucial evidence has irrevocably altered the proceedings. The lobby of the Federal Court Security Training Center had reverted to its ordinary appearance. A security officer sat at the desk. A television mounted in the corner displayed silent local news. Beyond the glass doors, the vibrant pulse of downtown Chicago unfolded beneath a muted winter sky. Vehicles navigated the slushy streets near the curb. A woman clad in a navy coat hurried past, clutching a paper cup of coffee. Further down the block, a bus emitted a soft hiss at its stop, its brakes releasing a cloud of steam into the frigid air. Maya hesitated just inside the entrance. For a fleeting moment, she felt adrift, unsure of her next step. The entire day had been an exercise in steadfastness.
maintaining a composed expression when men had laughed, keeping her voice measured when a judge had disparaged her, controlling her physical reactions when Ethan had advanced with all the forceful pride his physique afforded him, and holding herself together upon learning that the young girl rescued from the fire had grown into a 15-year-old aspiring violinist with ambitions of studying medicine. Now, there was nothing left to hold on to but the strap of her bag. Marcus Reed appeared in the corridor behind her, carrying his own gear bag. He stopped a few feet away, maintaining his customary distance, careful not to encroach upon her space. Heading south? Maya gazed out at the street. Bus, then train.
I can give you a ride. She regarded him with a subtle glance. Marcus raised a hand, not as a favor, just colleague courtesy. That remark almost elicited a smile from her. Are you always this precise with your phrasing? Only around individuals capable of incapacitating me in 4 seconds. He nodded with studied seriousness. Then I truly appreciate your mercy. This time, she did smile, a small, weary expression that surprised them both. The elevator doors opened behind them, and Judge Whitmore emerged into the lobby, alone. Stripped of his entourage, his judicial gravitas, and his aloof demeanor, he carried the folder in one hand and his overcoat draped over his arm. Upon seeing Maya, he halted. Marcus's gaze shifted from the judge to Maya. I'll wait outside. Maya gave a brief nod. Marcus proceeded through the glass doors into the chill, leaving them beneath the lobby lights with the necessary space for a potentially difficult exchange.
Whitmore approached gradually, then stopped several feet distant. Miss Williams, Your Honor. He winced slightly at the title, a familiar discomfort, but accepted it. Miss Parker has initiated the necessary replacement paperwork. Captain Ruiz is in possession of the incident report. I have also instructed my clerk to ensure the preservation of all recordings from today. Maya observed him intently. That is the appropriate course of action. Yes, he affirmed. It is. For a few seconds. Neither spoke. Whitmore then turned his gaze toward the glass doors where the city's traffic flowed past. Lily used to inquire about you. Maya's eyes returned to him. She was quite young, he continued. The physicians advised us she might not retain precise memories, but she recalled being held. She remembered being encouraged to continue breathing. For months, she referred to you as the Fire Lady. Maya swallowed. Whitmore's voice softened. We made efforts to locate you. Not diligently enough. Not persistently enough. I understand that now. We allowed gratitude to become a narrative rather than a commitment. Maya tightened her grip on her backstrap. People do that when they're fortunate enough to return home. Her words weren't precisely accusatory, but worn smooth by their unvarnished truth. Whitmore nodded. Yes, they do. He opened the folder and extracted a pristine copy of the benefits packet. This is not an act of favoritism. It is merely a replacement for what I inadvertently destroyed. Maya accepted it but offered no thanks, nor did he seem to anticipate any. Instead, he added, Lily should know your name. Maya looked down at the packet, then back up. Only if she wishes to. That choice rests solely with you and her. Maya stated, I did not enter that fire with the intention of becoming a part of anyone's family history. Whitmore's eyes welled with moisture, though he maintained his composure. Why did you go in? Maya contemplated the question. She had fielded numerous variations of it from nurses, neighbors, and even Elijah once, when he was younger and distressed by her scar. Why would you do that, Mama? She had never found a truly heroic response, because the reality was far simpler and weightier than mere heroism. She looked at Whitmore. Because I heard a child crying, and everyone else was waiting. The judge lowered his head. Maya started toward the door, then paused. That is precisely what court protection should entail as well, she said, glancing back at him. Not an imposing presence behind glass, she explained. Not individuals making pronouncements about who matters from a detached vantage point. It should be someone who acts decisively when hesitation incurs too great a cost. Whitmore absorbed her words with a slow nod. I will remember. Maya studied him one last time. Remembering is the easy part. Implementing change requires effort. Yes, he replied softly. I know.
No, Maya corrected, her voice calm, almost gentle. You are just beginning to understand. She walked away before he could respond. The biting cold struck her face instantly, a sharp contrast against the raw line of her scar. She inhaled, and the winter air filled her lungs like a tangible confirmation that she was still standing. Marcus waited by the curb, his collar turned up, feigning ignorance of her departure. Everything all right? He inquired. Maya scanned the street toward the bus stop. Not everything. Marcus nodded. Fair enough. Her phone buzzed. She retrieved it from her pocket, and for a single second, the entirety of the day seemed to condense onto the cracked screen in her hand. Elijah, Mom, did they laugh at you again? Maya stared at the message for a considerable duration. She could vividly picture him sitting at Mrs. Carter's kitchen table, his homework pushed aside, attempting to sound nonchalant while carrying the burden of worry far too heavy for a 10-year-old boy. He had inherited her eyes and an excessive portion of her inclination to silently bear adult anxieties. She typed slowly. Maya, yes, baby. 3 dots appeared, vanished, then reappeared. Elijah, are you okay? Maya looked back through the glass doors. Judge Whitmore still stood in the lobby, now alone, bearing nothing but the weight of his recent realization. Beyond him lay the training hall, where her scar had been subjected to ridicule and then subsequently became a symbol of resilience. She observed Marcus, the snow beginning to fall softly over Chicago, the benefits packet tucked beneath her arm, and the bus approaching the curb, its headlights casting a warm glow through the frigid air. Then she typed back, Maya, I'm fine, and I got the job. The reply arrived almost instantaneously. Elijah, I knew it. Are you coming home? Maya felt a profound sense of release in her chest, a knot that had been tightly bound since morning finally loosening. Maya, I'm on my way. She slid the phone into her pocket and proceeded toward the bus stop. Marcus fell into step beside her, not ahead, not behind, but simply alongside her, a rare and welcome act of consideration. As Maya ascended the bus steps, the driver, an older black man with streaks of silver in his beard, briefly glanced at the scar on her cheek, then at the badge paperwork in her hand. He did not stare. He simply offered a nod, a quiet acknowledgement from someone who had witnessed individuals navigate through adversity. Evening, ma'am, he said. Maya returned his nod. Evening. She found a seat by the window and placed her duffel bag on her lap. Within it lay the torn, damp remnants of the old paperwork, with the crisp replacement packet nestled above them. She did not discard the scraps. Not yet. Some evidence deserved to be retained until its lesson had fully permeated its purpose. The bus pulled away from the curb and proceeded south through the city, passing by courthouse steps, venerable churches, corner stores, and apartment windows radiating warmth against the winter darkness. Maya watched Chicago drift by, the same city that had once caused her such profound pain, had tested her, and yet somehow continued to hold her son, her future, and the small, persistent flicker of hope that tomorrow might bring a positive change. Her scar reflected faintly in the glass. For years, People had gazed at it and perceived only damage. Today, they had finally begun to comprehend its true significance. It represented a child's second opportunity, a mother's sacrifice, a cautionary reminder to the arrogant, an irrefutable proof that those whom others underestimate are often the very individuals standing as a bulwark between life and destructive forces. The enduring lesson derived from Maya Williams' narrative is that genuine strength is frequently understated, marked by experience, and frequently overlooked. Individuals may be judged based on their ethnicity, gender, outward appearance, economic standing, or personal suffering. However, such judgments frequently reveal more about the observer than the individual being assessed. Maya's scar was not an emblem of weakness. It served as testament to her courage, her selflessness, and her profound love. Her journey serves as a powerful reminder that justice cannot truly exist when prejudice is permitted to remain unchallenged within a given space. True character is not demonstrated through displays of power, prestigious titles, or boisterous confidence, but rather through our commitment to protecting others, our willingness to acknowledge our mistakes, and our deliberate choice to embrace truth over personal pride. Thank you for accompanying this narrative to its conclusion. If this story resonated with you emotionally, I would genuinely appreciate hearing your reflections on the storytelling, the emotional ebb and flow, or any aspect that left a lasting impression. Every comment you share contributes to the creation of future narratives that are more authentic, emotionally impactful, and deeply meaningful. Furthermore, if you possess a compelling or inspiring personal story, please do not hesitate to submit it to the channel. It may very well become the next story to touch and uplift countless individuals. This presentation is a work of pure fiction, conceived with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, occurrences, and circumstances depicted are entirely imaginary and do not represent any real individuals or factual events. The content is intended solely for narrative purposes and emotional illustration.